from your perspective, first of all, you were pleased at that overturning of Roe versus Wade last week, in contrary to the vast majority of Americans. Just explain why you hold those views.
Of course, and thanks so much for having me on this morning. Millions of Americans, pro-life Americans, were full of gratitude when the Supreme Court just overruled Roe v. Wade. The very day of the ruling, already some abortion clinics closed and some lives were saved, and many, many more lives will be saved in the future. So that, of course, is something to celebrate. And, you know, the United States had the most extreme abortion laws really in the world, up there with China and North Korea. In some states, we permitted abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. So finally, we have the opportunity in the United States to protect human lives in the womb.
Saved. I mean, the evidence suggests the contrary. Banning abortions doesn't actually work. Wherever women seek abortions, they will just continue to do that. They'll just have to do it illegally, very often with increased risk to themselves and potentially more deaths. And that's according to, not my views, Guttmacher Institute, a reproductive institute that have all the evidence around the world of where it's legal and illegal and the risks associated with it.
That's actually incorrect. Even the Guttmacher Institute admits and have done other studies showing that when abortions are more expensive, as an example, less women have abortions. So if abortions are harder to obtain, less women will have them. And in Texas, which banned abortions recently after 6 weeks of pregnancy when the baby's heart starts beating, the abortion rate declined by 50%. So the facts bear out otherwise.
Well, I mean, we'll have to disagree on that because obviously you can quote different evidence. The Guttmacher Institute quite clearly in the research that I looked at said that banning abortion doesn't stop them from happening. In countries where it is restricted, they happen roughly as frequently as countries where they're not. They're just more risky. A lot of people in response to that decision last week look at America and they see them and they think this is a country where a whole bunch of children were just murdered in a primary school. Lots of people saying guns have more rights than women. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, guns have killed 7,000 children a year in the United States, which is horrific. Abortion has killed and is killing, under legal abortion in the United States, over 600,000 children every single year. So it is so vital that we fight to reduce abortions, that we ban abortions, that we help women and provide them the resources that they need, and that we educate women and men on the value of human life in the womb. You know, birth doesn't make you human. You don't become human magically at birth. You're human before birth. You know, our lives begin at fertilization. The science is crystal clear, and humans deserve human rights. All humans have them. So we need to acknowledge the human right to life of a child, even the most vulnerable child in the womb, and make our societies more welcoming to human life instead of offering them up to abortionists to be killed for profit.
Yeah, but unfortunately, there isn't scientific consensus about where life begins. And you talk about these embryos, zygotes, whatever they might be, as children. But that's really a religious viewpoint, or indeed, in some cases, a political viewpoint. It's not a scientific viewpoint, because on that basis, by your own reasoning, the whole IVF industry would be criminal. I mean, 4 million Americans every year get fertility treatment through IVF. For every one of those, a number of embryos are fertilized and then disposed of because they're not required because of successful pregnancy. So by your reasoning, within science, which is good proof of life, there's mass murder there as well.
I think you're incorrect, first of all, about consensus, scientific consensus on when human life begins. Open any biology textbook and it will tell you when a single cell embryo comes into existence. It's at the moment of fertilization, the fusion of the sperm and the egg. And, you know, 96% of scientists agree, biologists agree, when they were surveyed by the University of Chicago, that human life begins at the moment of fertilization. So this is not a religious belief. It's not a matter of personal conviction. The life of the beginning of our lives begin at a very particular point. That's very clear scientifically. You mentioned IVF in an in vitro fertilization clinic. What are the scientists or the in vitro technicians trying to do? They're trying to create an embryo, right, in a petri dish. They know when life begins in the in vitro fertilization clinic. It's when they have created that single cell embryo that they then grow a little bit and then try to implant. And I think the IVF industry is another question. We could discuss that separately, but clearly there's a lot of abuses in that industry in how human lives are created sometimes by the dozens or even the hundreds, and then disposed of without any regulation. It's a big problem in the United States.
There isn't. I mean, it's not true to say there is scientific consensus. There's many, many scientists who would disagree. But may I just move on, because we are limited on time. Lots of people talk about the female rights in all of this, women's rights being secondary in many cases, and forcing women to go to term with a pregnancy that, quite frankly, for many reasons, for health reasons, may not be suitable. Now, if you just bear with me, because this is a long tweet, but I want to read it, and it's from a woman called Suzanne. She says, pro-lifers don't like complexity. At 17 weeks, my placenta detached, and he was much too small. I thought I felt my baby's frantic attempts to breathe. My OBGYN, an obstetrician, advised me to terminate the pregnancy. There wasn't much time, but I couldn't. And she goes on to talk about her experience of why she didn't want to, and eventually she had to because of medical reasons. Now, essentially, she was going to die if she didn't have that termination. She was treated by a doctor and had to walk through a picket line of people shouting abuse at her, even though she was a mother and had her child with her, calling her a murderer. And the surgeon that performed the surgery on her was later murdered himself for what he did. There will now be, won't there, lots of contention about women's lives being put at risk.
Yeah, I think you're reading a tweet from the internet that I think has a lot of misinformation in it, unfortunately. Late-term abortion.
You don't think there'll be cases of women whose lives are at risk if they don't have their...
If you would let me finish. Late-term abortionists are not equipped to deal with high-risk pregnancies. And in a high-risk pregnancy, especially later term, having an abortion will actually further endanger the woman's life. I work with thousands of medical professionals and OBGYNs who say that actually late-term abortion endangers the woman's life because you have to go and intentionally kill that baby before delivery. What a pro-life doctor would do in order to care for both the mother and the child is let that baby be delivered alive. Don't go in there and give the baby a lethal injection first, which is what a late-term abortion does. Instead, give the child a chance to be delivered alive. In both an abortion and in a live birth, delivery is necessary. Why not deliver the baby alive? And that's why thousands of medical professionals, despite the lies of the abortion industry, say that abortion is not medically necessary and we can care for both the mother and the child.
I mean, so many people will just totally disagree with what you're saying, as I said at the beginning, including with the vast majority of Americans. A YouGov poll, may I finish my point, if you wouldn't mind? A recent YouGov poll said 52% of Americans thought that this overturning of Roe versus Wade was a step backwards. 17% thought it was neither forwards nor backwards, and only 31% thought that this was a step forwards. Lots of women, daughters, sisters, have fewer rights than their mothers.
That's incorrect. I think what you're not understanding is that almost 80% of Americans want abortion restrictions. And what Roe v. Wade prevented most states from doing is having meaningful abortion restrictions. Even in England, there are abortion restrictions that are more strict than in many states in the United States right now. I mean, in England, you can't have an abortion after about 24 weeks of pregnancy. In the United States, we have some states that permit abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. So it is a bare minimum to allow states in the United States to protect children. Roe v. Wade prevented communities to protecting children in their vicinities. And finally, we have that opportunity now that has been overruled and states have the right to protect children.
There'll be so many people watching this who think you're entitled to your view. They may well even agree with you. But there's the argument that why should you impose your views on other women? Sure, you don't like abortion. Sure, you don't want to have an abortion. Perhaps you'll discourage your daughter from having an abortion. But why impose that on all other women?
I mean, if you apply this to other human rights issues, that phrase you just said, it's, you know, you're personally pro-life, so why can you make other people pro-life? You can say, well, I'm personally opposed to child abuse. I'm not going to tell other people not to abuse their children. No, we're talking about human lives here, human lives that have value and worth, and children that deserve to live. And you know what? This idea that women are benefited by abortion, this is an antiquated idea that's born out of, you know, past generations who thought that we can't, as women, be mothers and achieve our dreams at the same time. I believe in something better for women, and I absolutely believe in legal protection for children. They're human beings like us, and it's time for a day when we embrace a culture of life where women and children, where all people are cherished.
Lilla Rose, President and founder of Live Action. We have to leave it there. Thank you very much for sharing your views with us this morning.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.